All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming down tonight. We are live from Books and Books in Coral Gables, Florida, so a note to our internet audience watching at home. If at any time during the presentation you'd like to purchase a copy of tonight's book, you can call the number on your screen. We will take care of that for you. We will get it signed, and we will ship it to wherever you are in the United States free of charge. So tonight, Books and Books is very happy to welcome Mr. Dimitry Elias and his new novel, God Loves Haiti. Mr. Leger was born in Port-au-Prince and educated at St. John's University and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. He's a former staff writer at the Miami Herald, Fortune magazine, and The Source magazine, and also a contributor to the New York Times, Newsweek, and The Face magazine in the United Kingdom. In 2010, he worked as an advisor to the United Nations disaster recovery operations in Haiti after the earthquake. This is his first novel and his debut appearance as a first-time novelist. In it, he brings a story of romance, politics, and religion that traces the fates of three lovers in Port-au-Prince and the challenges they face readjusting to life after an earthquake devastates their city. Tonight, Mr. Leger will be in conversation with a great friend of Books and Books. She is the author of many highly acclaimed books and the recipient of a MacArthur Fellowship, Ms. Edwidge Danticat. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Dimitry Elias Leger and Ms. Edwidge Danticat.
Good evening. Welcome to Books and Books. Those of you online, those of you in the room, welcome to Dimitry. Is this your first time here at the store?
My first time. No, I've been to the store before. It's my first time ever doing an event or a reading in
Well,
public.
welcome. It's painless. They're a very nice audience. So I thought we would start by, for you to hear Dimitry read from his novel. It's a beautiful novel. You can see by the, if you have a copy, you'll see by all the generous and well-deserved blurbs in the back. So it's always great to get a taste of, of the words and of the story. So maybe, Dimitry, you could start by telling us a little bit about the book and then reading us a little bit, and then we'll...
Okay. The book is the saga of three people. Although there's a first among equals, is this woman who's married to the president of Haiti, and she also had a boyfriend her age on the side. And when the earthquake happened and she realized she survived, she went into great turmoil to figure out, okay, why she did what she did before and how can she make things right. And as the book proceeds, she's looking to make things right and failing miserably. She's an artist. She's also a woman of great faith, and guilt is killing her. And she goes on this journey looking for her lovers and to make things right, but she was in many ways looking for herself. That's the book. This bit I'm going to read, each chapter is told in the perspective of each person, the three characters. And this one is from the perspective of the lover, Alain Destiné. Should I start at the beginning of the chapter? That's better? Yeah.
You should tell him the title of the chapter, too. It's so great.
Yes. The title of the chapter is Welcome to Place Pigeon.
We'll explain that later.
I explain that later. Oh, oui. Pas bueno.
Oh, dirty mind.
Wow.
Okay.
The morning after the earthquake, to the surprise of most folks in Haiti and around the world, the sun rose over Haiti, as it had since the dawn of time, pulsing brilliant and warm, and shone over the land like a glorious yellow candlelight with a special affection for Caribbean islands. The sun over Haiti that day after the earthquake lodged in a clear sky so blue the Caribbean Sea seemed to reach up and merge with it. The air, too, retained its customary light fragrance. The freshness of the air inspired roosters to sing their hearts out, and sing they did that morning, determinedly, robustly, and with pride. The island was still above water, and palm trees felt cool enough about the state of affairs to cock their long leafy crowns just so. The morning brought rising heat, and the warming of the ground beneath his buttocks spurred Alain Dessiné into another attempt at holding on to his consciousness. Squinting and rubbing his eyes, Alain briefly ignored the sharp pain spreading throughout his body to take in his surprising location, one of the parks across the street from the National Palace. Alain saw his car. To his astonishment, the car hung about 10 meters in the air, impaled on the statue of a woman holding a pair of pigeons. The statue gave the park its name, Place Pigeon. Pigeons liked the homage and congregated there regularly en masse. Before the park became the site of his seemingly impending doom, Alain had liked Place Pigeon too. Back when he dated unmarried women, the young bachelor took dates on strolls through the park after an evening at the movies at Le Capitole, the nearby theater. The couple would be wearing their Sunday best and talking breathlessly about the baroque drama of the kung fu films they'd just seen. Young lovers in Port-au-Prince had been doing so since his father's and his grandfather's days. Following tradition always made Alain happy. He had a lifelong thing for Haitian society's old world notions of honor and gallantry. "You're so old-fashioned for a boy," the women of various ages he courted often told him. He knew he had them once they said that. For women, he'd learned at a precocious age, liked to be wicked with boys their parents and the rest of the world found non-threatening.
Thank you. So now, oh, come on.
Venez as well. Get place là.
You can introduce them as they come.
Right. Guys, these are my cousins from... They've come from far and wide to be here.
Oh, this is a family affair.
It's a family affair.
Welcome, welcome.
My
cousin.
sister-in-law came here from Phoenix.
Wow. And there's a character named Phoenix in the book.
Yes.
Welcome, cousin. So we'll I wanted to start by asking you about the title of the novel, God Loves Haiti. And were you at all concerned that people would think you were a missionary who had written a memoir?
I felt like a missionary writing it, and the characters in it, in many ways, because you spend a lot of time in the heads of these people, going, oh my God, most of the book, after seeing what they've seen and experienced what they've experienced. In many ways, the book is a collection of prayers. So when I got around to the climax where someone talked about God loving Haiti or not, I was like, oh, that's the title. And I always thought about God Bless America, but I always loved Haiti just as much. And I thought it worked. I thought it would stand out. And I thought it would be unironic either.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about right before the, when I first saw the title, I thought of that Chris Rock movie, Head of State, where he goes into this ranting dialogue, and his opposition in the campaign was always saying, "God bless America," and nowhere else. It seems that people wrestle a lot with how soon novelists, not so poets, not so journalists, but how soon novelists should start tackling a disaster, because there was, even on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, there was all this hankering about whether we had our great 9/11 novel. So how soon after the earthquake did you start thinking about writing this book, and how soon after did you actually start writing it?
I spent 8 months in Haiti after the quake. And during those 8 months, I slept in a tent. The UN, they had us in a military base and for work, and I had us in a tent community to sleep in because there was a lot of aftershocks and buildings were coming down all the time. So it took 6 months to figure out which buildings were safe that we could rent and have apartments. And during that 6 months, we lodged in tents. 20 people in a tent, kind of the size of almost this room, and we all had like own little slots, like prison cells. So when I got back from Haiti, from working there, I needed to sleep. You don't sleep well in a tent with 20 other guys. And after 3 months of sleeping, We we went down. I live in Geneva, and we drove down to Florence to see a friend of ours who just gotten divorced. And she lived in Philly. She moved back to Florence. She's gotten divorced, and I heard her story, and I was like, I knew before I'd write a book, I'd wanted to write a novel for a long time, and I had another novel in mind, but people kept telling me about how they experienced the earthquake, and people just were compelled to tell you that all the time. And I had so many details about what those 35 seconds were like, and what the first minute, 5 minutes, day was like afterwards, and they stayed with me. They haunted me in a way, and I had to channel them. And so thinking about a divorce day, thinking about adultery, and thinking about all those stories, it was about giving you something you wouldn't see in a newspaper, giving you the story from inside people who actually experienced the 35 seconds, and putting you inside their feet, inside their heads, inside their bodies, and more importantly, trying to get you to their soul. And since I didn't experience the earthquake, I felt compelled to tell that story first.
Mm-hmm. The book is very, it's funny, and it's. Were you concerned that's this is a subject that I have to address with reverence, or was the humor immediately a part of it to you? Because I think there is that we have that balance in Haiti. Like when I went back for the first time, there were people already making jokes. Like I had an aunt who had pains, and they were like, oh, she would say, I feel it in my thin, and people are then making jokes about how she always feels it. They were already kind of a dark humor about the earthquake and what had happened in spite of it. So we use humor as a coping mechanism.
Yep.
And was that part, did you have that in mind when you started writing the book?
Yes. I mean, Gudu jokes started more or less, it started very early. I mean, gallows humor is great. Gallows humor is a coping mechanism. People had jokes, and I had some great laughs. And I knew I had to get that in there. In fact, I knew that's the book I wanted to write. And yes, there's all these facts, and yes, there's this great tragedy, but as you're climbing yourself out of tragedy, as you're grasping for hope, humor gets you through the day, gets through out of bed. And we always got out of bed. I mean, Haitians always get out of bed. I mean, there's like 9 million of us. There was like 6 million when I was a kid. Like, the island increases. I mean, population is increasing. That means life continues. And life, it was always expected to continue down there. No one felt like giving up. And humor in a Haiti novel is something that I felt I could bring. I couldn't do, that was my voice. That's the voice that came out. So I read a lot of poetry. I read a lot of Saramago. A lot of Latin guys who write about death and make you laugh about it. And I thought about writing about death, but in a way that every chapter had to get to the funny. If I could get to the funny, then I could move on. But getting to the funny was important.
And in the same spirit, to the book is dedicated to family members, but also to, you say, to the 9 million survivors of the earthquake, as opposed to, let's say, to the memory of the dead. That seems to go along with that same choice.
Yes, because 9 million of us are there, and I spent a lot of time with my relatives who live there, who could leave but don't want to leave. They're like, we're fine.
People never think those people exist. Like I always say, there are people who are like my uncle who never wanted to leave.
Yes, and through the years, I must say, even I was a little mystified. There were times where I was like, dude, come on. Like, no, we're fine. And when I got there, though, and we're having dinner, we're hanging out, the wives and the children were already safe in South Florida. But the 4 guys were out there trying to handle business. And they were having these debates. I was in the cell phone. A call comes in from Fort Lauderdale. I was like, are you coming this weekend? When are you coming? And the tension was there. The conversations were being had. But there was also the argument of, it's cold. It's colder north of Haiti. And
even in Jacmel.
Even in Jacmel. There's the phrase Haitians use, you get the cold eats you. You get eaten by the cold.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, why do you want me to come out there and get eaten by the cold for?
Yeah.
And then at that argument, I had no argument for that. It is cold up here. And bad days, I moved to South Florida from New York in 2002, and I was like, wow, it's January, I don't have to wear a scarf. My colleagues were like, you don't even have to wear a blazer. But I was stubborn, I wore a blazer every day to work, and sweating like crazy. If you live in Haiti all year round, you live in South Florida all year round, you're actually good to go. And sunlight is a great equalizer. You feel less poor for the world if you have great sunshine. And I had no idea about that till I got there and I witnessed these dinner table conversations and I heard these arguments. And my die was already cast, my life is outside of Haiti. But these guys, they had a life there, they had houses, they had colleagues, they had work. And America is great to visit. They come here often, dentist visits, what have you. But home is home. And I was like, okay, chapeau. And I thought those guys, those stories, deserved a story. And that's why my characters are pretty well off, and they lived in both worlds, and they could leave. And the fact that they could leave is the part that was that tortured them a bit. After the earthquake, leaving seemed really, really reasonable. But people who could leave and don't, there's a lot of them. And they make compelling characters, and they have a compelling story.
And Alain, you're the Natasha, the main character's lover. She's married to the president, but Alain is like her side guy. He's one of those people in a very interesting way, because sometimes when I was reading the book, I feared for you. Like sometimes I'll see on the Facebook or something, someone will have a quote like that a character said. That is not necessarily my belief, but it will say like, anger is a weighted emotion, Edwidge Danticat. And I want to say, no, it's so-and-so from such a story.
Yes, it's not me, it's not me.
And they were possibly in an argument when they say that. And there were so many, Alain had so many like that, where if they put like Dimitry, Elias, Leger, you would lose your right to go back to Haiti.
Yes.
Because he's really like, we all know these guys, like there are uncles, there are brothers who like, they are the fiercest critics of Haiti, but they love it the most. And in them, it's like that whole James Baldwin thing, like you criticize something you love. And you're indifferent when you have no involvement, when you have no skin in the game. But he really, that character I wanted to know how you came to him. Because, I mean, we've met him in barbershops, we met him, but it's like that person who has such a fierce love that they're just angry that the country can't be what they want it to be.
I was really careful when I decided to write this. I was like, okay, it's going to star a woman, it's going to star the president, it's going to star a guy her age. No middle-aged married guys in the book, really. Nobody like me. And
you're middle-aged? That makes me middle-aged, which is
and I was careful about that, and I was intrigued by that. And one thing about the earthquake, one thing about surviving an accident, car accident, almost whatever it is, it can make you an atheist, it can make you a believer. A lot of people survive stuff and they go the other way and become atheists. Okay, there can't be a God because my son almost died. And some people actually get hit and get hurt and get back up and they're like, Jesus, God loves me. I didn't believe before, but Jesus, why did I survive? So that kind of debate happened a lot. So there were people in Haiti who were true believers, who were super patriots, who after the earthquake, they were like, these people. And there were people who were not true believers, who were looking for the way out and who hated the place and who became slowly, against their will, became patriots. And Alain happened to be one of those characters who was a true believer. Went to NYU Business School, grew up in Brooklyn. You know, he had a whole life set made for him here in the States. But he went back and wanted to start businesses and wanted to build a country and turn it into Martinique. Then the earthquake happens, and his faith, his confidence is shot. And he's actually one of the funnier characters because of that. Because while everyone around him is trying to, he lived in a refugee camp instead of going home to Pétionville, where his parents were freaked out. And he worked out his issues. And he's confronted with people in the refugee camps trying to get their lives together. Aid workers coming in and out, stuff actually changing a little bit, inch by inch. And he's helping out, but at night he's like, Jesus, why did I survive? And Jesus, I don't even believe in you, and I survived. So, yeah, he represented that particular trope and those particular people who were true believers, who became less believers afterwards, and slowly had to find hope eventually, or not. That's where I learned this name came from. And he talks like a Haitian American who did time in Brooklyn, so he curses a lot.
Be warned.
Be warned, yes, be warned.
So,
and he curses in ways I wished I cursed, because I live in Switzerland, and we spend a lot of time with people who English is like the third or fourth language. You have to talk very slowly, and you can't really curse that much without freaking people out.
So the president in the book bears a striking resemblance to a particular president that we have had, and even some American president who's been involved in Haiti too. So did you have a particular president in mind, or were you just merging? Because at the beginning of the book, the president and his wife they're making a very big decision. I'm not going to give away a big plot point. They're making a big decision. So, but the president is this president is faced with this huge disaster. He doesn't say my palace has broken, but it's something like, were you thinking of anybody?
I was in Harlem last week, and a guy cornered me in a party and said, "It was Preval. Come on, admit it. It was Preval. Come on. I was like, no. But I was sympathetic. I'm sympathetic to all my characters, but I was sympathetic with everyone in Haiti trying to get stuff done in those circumstances. And Preval could have left and did everything out of a villa in Miramar. So no, I was sympathetic with Preval, but he's a happily married gentleman, and his wife is not like 40 years younger than him. But so in that sense, my character is a composite. Mm-hmm. And so are his friends, and so are his colleagues. I think if you're in that job, I always thought that job was always fascinating to me, because why would you want that job? And it's a job that
everybody wants it, though.
Everybody wants that job.
Yeah.
And it's a job that people have done atrocious things for. And I knew the novel when it started going, and I was writing about a character who's the president, and I was giving him personality, and then he was starting to seem interesting to me. I was like, okay, I'm in new territory here. I was thinking more like one of Marquez's generals, but I was thinking like, no, this is new territory, and let's have fun with this. I did get glimpses of the Preval family. I know his daughter, like, she was in the building when it collapsed, and she barely got out. So those things made me sympathetic. I was sympathetic to all survivors. So I think they were survivors, so I was sympathetic. But I was never privy to his conversations with the president and other dignitaries. Although I was in enough meetings because of my job between UN program managers and Haitian senators and ministers, that I could imagine how those conversations went. And so I had my character deal with that a lot, because those conversations are kind of hilarious, because you walk in there, this guy's running the country, he's a senator or a minister, but you have bags of cash. And so you have this negotiation, this pas de deux that takes place between aid workers, particularly the senior people, and Haitian government. And I saw those a lot, and I wanted to write about that somehow without offending my colleagues on either side. And having a president who proves to be an interesting guy, navigating the people, his marriage, and the international community, and their billions and billions of cash and all their ideas and all their lack of patience, I thought that was going to be good fun. So I had fun with it.
And I think you did go into new territory at the same time while talking about the path tread before, because there are all these jokes about Haitian presidents. There's the one where Duvalier goes to heaven and God gets up and greets everybody but him because God is afraid Duvalier will sit where he sits and never get up. And so there's all these jokes like that and other jokes that you tell about the presidency in the book. And what I thought was interesting is that you really released all your shackles in terms of, what was possible, what's possible. At the same time, you have all the details of like the envoy, the president being so aware that in a way it's like I don't want to be accountable to the envoy, but the country won't run without the envoy and all the balancing that they had to do. And that way he becomes a very sympathetic character, almost very likable at the end. But also all these wild places where this is going is very interesting. The way he meets the woman, for example, you guys have to read the book to find out. It's fascinating the way the president meets the main character. So I have two more questions before we throw it to the audience. So when I went to Haiti after the earthquake, I felt like I needed a text, almost like a literary. I feel like I needed something that would explain to me Haiti, but it didn't necessarily have to do with Haiti. So I went with Murakami's After the Quake, which is a collection of stories about like right after an earthquake in Japan. And I thought, and it was funny because we were sleeping on the roof of one uncle's house who didn't collapse every night, and I would read that in the line. I feel like, it's like I'm in Japan. It was to me such a strong correlation with the experiences in different places. Did you take any books with you?
I had no books with me. I didn't have space. My tent was too small. But afterwards, I turned to some texts. But I told the same text I always read. I love Hemingway, and he wrote some heartbreaking love stories about surviving the war and World War II. I read a lot of World War II, especially World War II movies, but a lot of The English Patient was always a fetish, and I turned to that a lot when it was time to write. And nonfiction-wise, there was a Japan story as well, but it was Hiroshima by John Hershey. That followed 4 people who survived the bombing as they make their way, dealing with the aftershocks. That text was extremely helpful. But this only happened afterwards. During that time, I was working all the time, and there was no time to read. You're always stuck in the car, but the traffic was so bad, so I couldn't concentrate and read. But afterwards, I read. I went back to my favorite World War II novels, and I went back to Hiroshima, and the atom bombing was very sudden, very unexpected. Even though they had some preparation for it, it still was a shock. No one thought the sky would rain fire, which it did, and people were burned and had to deal and had to walk through dead bodies to get to shelter. And that was akin to the stories I heard about people who survived the earthquake, people looking for shelter, people walking around dead bodies. And that book proved to be helpful afterwards. But otherwise, it's World War II love stories like The English Patient, The End of the Affair, which was an extremely Catholic book for a World War II book, which is not commonly known, but it was a very Catholic book because Graham Greene was very, very Catholic. Yeah. And Farewell to Arms. And Farewell to Arms with its deadpan ending. I figured if I could get within light years of that, I'll have done a decent job.
So what's next?
A few more weeks here in cold New York, actually, so hopefully. I wish it would be a few more weeks in South Florida, but.
Book tours only allow you one night in places, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you writing another novel? Or?
Yes, I went back to the story I was thinking about before I got sucked into God Loves Haiti. And that's a story of a football player, Haitian football player, who for one shining moment was like the most famous football player on earth and playing for the American national team before ultimately dying tragically. True story. But I'm going to give him...
Tell him his name.
I can never pronounce his last name. Joe Gatchen. Gatchen? Gatchens?
Yeah.
Même en français? C'est quoi? C'est Gatchens? Ouais, c'est allemand. Ouais, il est allemand, il est demi-allemand. Ouais, it's a German name. So he was this half Haitian, half German, kid in Port-au-Prince who went to Columbia to study finance and secretly played football in Central Park, got tabbed by the Americans to play for the American national team, went out to Brazil, and brought us glory for one game anyway.
And we'll be talking about it till the end of time.
Yes, yes. So
that
that's
one goal, one game.
that one goal, one game, man. One goal, one game, and so he's a story inspired by his life story is the next book, and the cool thing about this is that this required that I spend 6 months in Haiti after the earthquake. 6 months in Haiti is generally a good thing. After the earthquake, wasn't that fun? But for the next one, I had to spend 3 weeks in Brazil.
For
so
you.
It was, yeah. It's Brazil during the World Cup. It was like, pay back, So it came full circle, and that's going to be the next one. And look forward to getting to work to it. I started already, but I've been caught up with this, and hopefully get it done as quickly as possible.
Right, well, we'll look forward to it because we need to keep that legend going.
Yes.
For the next generation. One game, one
game, one goal, man. One goal, one header. You did it.
It's a great story. It's a very inspirational story.
Yeah.
All right. So now, if any of you have questions, I think the mic you have to speak through a certain mic so that the internet audience can hear you, right?
Well, no, we have these microphones up.
Oh, okay. All right. We've progressed since last time.
Question.
You don't want your relatives to ask questions.
True.
Believe me.
True.
I've been there.
Did you read any account, and I know that as we celebrate the commemorate the 5th anniversary, every year there are books that come out about the Earth. There's Mark, I forget his name, Mark Schuler. There's the big trucks that go by. I think even Yannick Lyons wrote a little memoir about what happened after the earthquake. Did you read any of these things, any of these books as you were writing yours? Or Haitian authors, let's say?
I mostly read Haitian authors, mostly read Edwidge. And also Daniel Laferrière. He did a nice memoir, because he happened to be dead that day. Tout bouge autour de moi. And that was well done. That was really, really good and really, really helpful. There's a particularly fun passage in there where he's hanging out smoking a cigarette with one of his nephews. His nephew says, okay, Danny, you can't write a book about the earthquake. Mm-hmm. The earthquake is ours. Mm-hmm. You had Duvalier, have fun with that. This is us. Mm-hmm. Leave it alone. And he's like, as if I have a choice. But that resonated, because I felt like the Duvalier dictatorship impacted my life enormously. But I was a kid. This was like, as an adult, taking stock, dealing, and trying to wrestle with it. And so I felt more ownership for this, and that part really resonated. So chapeau for Danny, as usual.
Mm-hmm. In that part, he has a great answer to the nephew, too. He says, well, it could be the ultimate earthquake story could be written by someone in Germany, and could be written.
Yes.
And then he also talks about that whole thing of people, or people who want to own tragedies, of people who were not there, saying they were there, and how that goes into fiction. It's a really beautiful. It's a witness rendering you a testimony, but it also goes into the literary implications of bearing witness and times of tragedy.
Yeah, because there's a lot written about Haiti all the time. But reading about Haiti by people who actually like Haiti, it's a very small number. It's a very small number. Reputations get made like crazy of that place. But people actually like the place, people actually have some compassion, and actually just see it as a country, just like any other country. Beautiful and tragic, just like every country I've seen. And I've lived in quite a few now. Those people are very small in number, and Danny happens to be one of them. The big show that went by was pretty good. I liked it. But yeah, otherwise you're really looking at slim pickings, and you don't even need to get past the introduction to even keep reading those books, most articles. Because the compassion bit, the love bit, we actually love the place. It's home. And no foreigner can actually love it the way we love it. And so getting into that, and people write about it with that feeling, it's not easy. But once in a while it popped up, and I think I read most of it. Yes.
I was wondering if you come across a book called Man's Search for Meaning. You mentioned something about people's selfishness. I don't know, reading books about suffering. And you mentioned Hiroshima and Farewell to Arms and so on. And there's this book called, by Viktor Frankl, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning. And it dealt with how he managed to survive the concentration camp. And I was just wondering if you come across, obviously you haven't heard about it.
I didn't.
Viktor Frankl.
The Bible was pretty consistent with those themes as well. And the Divine Comedy, I read that a lot. It's 1,000 pages. I had to go through it all the time. And the Haitian Divine Comedy could have been an alternative title. And that book has like massive parallels. People know it for purgatory and hell and the way it depicts the suffering of people who sin. But what really makes the book resonate for me and as an expat is that the book's about homesickness. Dante wrote that after his party got kicked out of power in Florence, and he had to go hide out in northern Italy, and he was pining for Florence, and pining so badly, he wished ill on all the people who like blocking him from going home. And those people were in hell and purgatory for like 700 pages. And of course, he was pining for his one true love. And she's Beatrice, and he gets to meet her in heaven. And I always thought, I wonder what Beatrice's novel would be. And I went from there. Because that book is a Catholic. It says it's as close to the Bible if you're Catholic. And he does do a good job of depicting heaven and hell pretty good, and purgatory. And there's a lot of that in the book, and even more of it in Haiti. So I refer to that a lot for where hope comes from and where homesickness comes from, and who goes to hell and who doesn't go to hell, and our theories of it, and how love kind of like trumps everything, every damn thing.
We hope.
Oui, parce qu'il me paie de l'argent.
Translation. Is this
She
your
asked
aunt?
me, it's my cousin, my
Your
big cousin.
I'm telling you, the relative questions.
J'espère que... Ouais, je comprends. My cousin asked me why is the book only in English and not yet in French. And I told her because, well, writing it in English was the fastest way to get paid. No, to be fair, it's like if I was writing in French, I could write it in French, but it would take me so much longer. And I really want to get out my system quickly. I couldn't do one of those 5-year, 10-year journey for a book. I'm married with 2 kids, and people have to eat. So I did in English, and we sold world rights, and the publisher has to figure out a way to get another publisher to buy it and publish it in French, and Spanish, and German, and as many languages as possible.
No, first time. English or Creole?
Where? But the French one,
For me?
yes,
Just for her.
just for you. I want to see the French one too
Just for her.
because I write in French in my head. My inner voice is French, but English is practical. And also the French one is the one that's going to be similar, closer to what I was trying to get at. And more importantly, it's going to be the one that my kids can read. Because this English is too fast for them, but they could start taking bites of the French version. So I really want that because it's actually for them. But it's out of my hands. It's
I'm going to try.
inshallah.
I'm going to try to read it.
Good.
C'est
I need my English.
c'est pas difficile, c'est pas trop difficile. Ça peut aller. Any more questions?
Back there.
You mentioned that you read poetry before, after the quake. What role did the decisions of language, of the words that you use, coming right off your cousin's question, what role did poetic language play in your story?
Well, I was a journalist for 10 years, and journalism has a way of, I thought journalism would prepare me from writing novels, but turns out it was the opposite, for me anyway. Because if you're a really, really, really good journalist, you could make great arguments. And to me, novels that work are not arguments. There's the music. That's the trumps everything for me for a great novel. And to write prose and a story that has great musical quality, I need to turn to poetry. I need to unlearn journalism, spend years reading a lot of poetry, or novelists who write with a great, very light touch, who are generally former poets, to get to the light touch I wanted in a Haiti book. Because I couldn't do the dry, sober tone. I wanted something more ebullient and lighter. So I read a lot of poetry to get there and to unlearn the way journalism corrupted me. So I always make the distinction. I always make the distinction between my creative writing voice, my fiction writing voice, and my journalism voice. And some people find that striking, but it's like, well, yeah, journalism is argument. It's about efficiency, and that came in handy in some ways. But fiction writing, for me anyway, it's about the music. And as it were, my music is light, and good days poetic. So that's how I came around to that.
What would some of your most important characters say about Haiti 5 years after the quake?
That's a good question. And I try to shy away from Haiti theories. In some ways, it's same old, same old. On some other ways, it's people getting on with life. I did hear, and I'm going in 2 weeks, and I'm going to read the book, sign the book in Haiti, even though it's in English. I'm going in 2 weeks, but from what I understand, it has improved markedly from 2010. One barometer being the Wutu Lekai would take me like so long, and now it's super fast. And so there's improvements that are very tangible. They're there. But it's fairly absurd that the National Palace is not built. And since one of the characters is the president, and who would be a former president at this point, 5 years later, he'd be like, that means his successor is sleeping in a tent now or something. And he'd be kind of annoyed by that. But that said, the World Trade Center took 10 years to reopen. 10 years. So if the biggest, richest city on earth took 10 years to rebuild the World Trade Center, we could take our time with the National Palace. We have other priorities. Yes?
We were first in Port-au-Prince right after the earthquake, and you're surrounded by people who are reacting to tragedy and are going through some shock and grief and so forth. In what ways were you grieving, and how did your grief change over the months?
Wow, great question. The UN generally, as a rule, most agencies have a rule. They never send expats to their own country because it's lawyer representing himself, doctor operating on his family. It just as a rule, you just don't do it. Unethical. But this scale of this earthquake was so big that they made the exception. And it was only me and about 2 or 3 others who were brought in because they needed Creole speakers and also who could handle the pressure. The first thing that hit me over the first couple of months was that they were right to have that rule of not having you come out to help, because I couldn't detach the fact that that person looks like my dad, looks like my mom, looks like my son, looks like my cousin. These were family suffering. And it's like come on. How could the country be that bad off? The epicenter was in Carrefour. I'm from Carrefour. It's absurd. It's just, Tokyo couldn't handle a 7.1 earthquake in downtown Tokyo. And that's the best built city on earth for earthquakes. And so was Santiago, so was LA. No one could handle it downtown. We had it downtown. And the absurdity of that, the rage that came with that, the grief that came with seeing all this stuff, oh no, that killed me. That was my daily bread. I was pissed off. And I couldn't divorce the fact that this is my people.
How did you notice your grieving change
It didn't. It didn't. I drank less, but after a while, liquor is not going to do it. But no, over the month, what happens in a humanitarian disaster, what you discover quickly is that this is not the first disaster ever. This happens 2 or 3 times a year all over the world. And the UN, the humanitarian community, they are firemen, they new fire, let's go. And the heart, the goodness, the place with the most virtue, the place where you do the most good is those first 2 months. The first 2 months, the UN, the humanitarians, they're fantastic because Band-Aid, somebody's bleeding, they need a Band-Aid. Somebody's thirsty, you give them water. Delivering water, delivering food, delivering condoms, delivering tampons, that, at those first 2 months, you cannot do something better for another human being. After 3 months, around the 4th month, it starts being an emergency relief mission to being a development mission. And once development kicks in, all the politics and the complications that make that make these countries so underdeveloped, despite the big aid industry, they start kicking in. The money starts going in places. The money starts having wings. And that kicks in after 3 months. So the first 3 months, you're doing so much good, you're delivering so much help that you have that to bounce off the fact that you're grieving. But the second 3 months, when you're seeing that, okay, there's a long tradition here of like, the Canadians give the money that only Canadians could get as salaries and only Canadian NGOs could get, and how the money just comes and goes back to Montreal, Geneva, and New York, how it just hovers over the island, tickles it, and you start seeing that, then you're dealing with a different kind of anger. And that characterized the second half of my time there, seeing that. Because suddenly you're like, okay, right, that explains so much of the last 50 years. Why Congo had a GDP that rivaled China in 1977 and does not today.
You brought up the monetary aspect. As an outsider, I wouldn't be able to help but blame the French for demanding financial reparations for Haiti's freedom. How do you avoid that?
Haiti's relationship with the U.S. and France demands so many more books. But at its heart, it really helps explore the rapport we have with the poorest people around us, whether it's country to country or whether it's citizen to citizen. What we've known from development is that when the richest country in the continent is a good neighbor and decides to help develop the rest, the continent gets richer. That's happening in China, and that's why the European Union works, because Germany and France decide to be nice. And Germany decides, okay, I'm running this, we're all gonna eat. That never happened in the Americas. There's no United States of the Americas. Our empire is not built that way. Single currency across the board, one state where one by one, Canada, Mexico, Haiti's right there, it's like across the street. Cuba, Jamaica, and then down to one by one, everybody should become American and become part of this great and share the wealth. It's always gonna be fairly absurd that $12 trillion economy mushroomed here over the last 200 years, while, 2 billion? What's our economy? 2 billion? The Haitian economy is like, GDP is like 2 billion. When before, actually, it was quite bigger before independence. But you only go as far as your neighbors, as the kindness of your neighbors. All we know is countries kind of like, international trade makes countries richer. And Haiti's poor, but it's been poorer for having poor neighbors. And that's gonna be endless. So it's not even France. I mean, America's like 140 miles away. If trade policies were just fair and straight, like they are of Canada, who knows where we'd be right now. What we do know is from 1804 to 1899, there was a trade embargo. So suddenly we had all this sugar and coffee and this amazing engine that was producing half of France's GDP before the revolution. We had nobody to sell stuff to. So then we missed 100 years.
Then you have an occupation.
Then you have an occupation. So then it's like, instead of doing business like the English, they lost the war to George Washington. The next day they're like, so how much, let's do business. The French lost the war, and instead of, they became sore losers. And they got all their friends to be sore losers. Instead of saying, all right, cool, okay, fine, we lost, but let's do business. Let's buy your sugar. It's like, no, we lost the war, so I don't even want your sugar. We started on all this sugar. So better neighbors would go a long way to, or neighborliness would go a long way to helping. Because it's all about trade anyway at the end of the day, and trade is what makes countries richer. And we've seen that with Asia, we've seen that with Europe. That when the richest kid on the block says, okay, if you guys behave, we'll trade and we'll do business and we all get rich together. We need that to happen in the Americas. No problem.
Touching a little bit on what your cousin mentioned in a way. As a Haitian American, I have an interesting relationship with Haiti. I was born in this country, raised in this country. I feel a strong connection to my heritage as a Haitian American, but I don't have very much of a connection to the country itself. And it's evident in a lot of aspects of my personality. Like, for instance, I completely understand Creole, but I can't speak a word of it. I don't understand how it works in my brain. But and I love certain aspects of my heritage, and other aspects I either have no knowledge or feel ambivalent, or I don't really care for. And I was curious to know what sort of takeaway a person like myself, and there are many of us, would get from your book, which seems to be a love letter to Haiti. Or did you even have people like us in mind when you were writing this book?
Good question. If you're romantic, if you like adventure, if you're curious about new voices, you're my target reader. In terms of the island itself, I do know one critic actually, he enjoyed the book so much that he went down there afterwards to go see some of the sights. He went to Place Pigeon and he sent me a picture on Instagram. I couldn't have scripted a better reaction, and that was kind of dope. African-American guy, he usually goes to Montego Bay. They fly over us, but nah, he went down for a week. Go. I mean, countries are so much, reputations never do countries justice. Reputations don't do countries justice.
Especially our country.
Yes, yes. As far as I could tell, all countries have flaws and they have perfections. I live in France, and France is the most visited country on earth. So arguably the most popular country on earth. Yet clearly it's not perfect. So we're among the least popular countries on earth, but it's actually pretty cool down there. So pop down frequently. I'm hoping this incentivizes my kids, who are way younger than you, to okay, well, he cares that much about the place. What the hell? And you pop down for a summer. And you pop down for a year. Without me having to pay the bill. You pop down, visit.
And I think our part of the generation that came before did people like you an injustice, and maybe it's because it's sort of our parents too were afraid. They came out of Haiti at a very difficult time. So we grew up, and you perhaps did, and I perhaps did too. I did, I know I did, that you grew up this idea on the one hand, Haiti is the best place on earth, it's this paradise, but don't go.
Yes, yes.
Right?
A lot of my mom's family, they were on the wrong side of Duvalier's good side, and they ended up getting, half my uncles were killed, you know, and some of my, on my father's side. And so, you know, I have that legacy to deal with as far as, you know, part of my history with the country. And so
Even us
informs
who
my-
grew up there, you know, she left at 12, I left at 14. The headlines get to you. Headlines get to you. It's like a poison. Headlines get to you. I didn't even think they got to me, but it got me. I didn't realize how much they got to me till I landed there again. I got
Until you
there.
have some kids and you have to, you know, you're thinking, oh, I'm going with my kid. And so all of that, your parents went through that, and then it continues, yeah. But he's right. You have to, I mean, one thing I see a lot of young people do now, they have these groups that travel together, is that you take ownership, you know, and they're like, even those of us who went and were locked up in the house with our relatives,
Yeah.
you're like,
Or in a
you
tent.
find, yeah, you find some way to go, you're like, they don't know I'm here. I'm not recommending that. But you go in a way that you then take ownership of the place. And we're not all saying that you're going to go and be like, oh, you're going to love. I mean, there's complications to everything. It's a complicated place. But once you have your own relationship with that place, absent of other, you know, influences, what you read, what you then you can live with all of that still. But at least you have seen, you have experienced it for yourself. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good note on which to end. Right?
Yes, I do.
If there are no more questions.
We're good.
Thank you, Dimitry.